Hello, Efraín. Thank you so much for coming to our home here in Entity Data. We have today one of our series of Voice of Finance, talking in this case with the CFO of Microsoft Iberia. Efraín, you have a great experience as a finance professional. Could you share with us a bit of your background, how it's your story, your growth as a professional?
No, thanks for having me. My background is a bit eclectic because I'm an engineer. I started my career in engineering, and then I switched to finance, and actually worked for almost 17 years in the fast-moving consumer goods. So I was in P&G and L'Oreal, and in these two experiences, I lived in many countries. I lived in Peru because I'm Peruvian, in Barcelona in Spain, in Geneva, and Sao Paulo. And after this, I would say, world tour, I ended up here in Spain working in finance in my first CFO role, right? But before that, I did many of the building blocks of a finance career. So I was a controller, I was a manufacturing controller, which actually it's very much focused on cost. Then I was a kind of a business development finance manager when I was launching new products and helping the business cases of new launches of brands, for example. And I also did a lot of roles on commercial finance, right? So I think my baggage has been quite wide, and now I have this role that is kind of the end-to-end responsibility.
So that's impressive. It's really a holistic career.
Yes, indeed. And I think probably a couple of peculiarities I have noticed during my career is that the weight of the typical finance tasks like accounting, closing, or forecasting has been going down as I went up in the career, but also because I would say the environment has been changing, right? More and more these tasks have been either automated or outsourced. And what has remained at the core of the finance function is how much impact you can bring and how much insight you can generate.
That's great. Thank you for that intro. I think that it's perfect for what we are going to go into now, which is how do you bring that value of finance and how do you apply technology of people relations. This is something very special that I think you have been personally developing and studying, and we would like to get to know a bit better about that.
Yeah, thank you, Belén. I think I didn't mention this in the introduction, but I'm also a PhD student, so I do, I would say, original research, right? And part of my research is based on judgment on groups and how we can improve the accuracy of predictions in teams, right? And there is a social component of that. One of the things that we know from that literature is that the way teams interact is probably one of the biggest predictors of team performance, right? So there are a couple of things on these interactions, that, for example, the quality of the discussions, and very importantly, how these teams process error, right? And error is such an interesting component of learning because everybody speaks about learning from error. However, when you read the literature, very few companies have processes and have cultures that allow open discussion of error, right?
And how do you deal with, in this specific topic of errors? So Microsoft, where you have been working the past years, it's pretty advanced in the models they use for predictions, so the amount of expected errors is pretty low. But I'm pretty sure errors exist. How an organization such advanced as Microsoft deals with errors?
That's a very good question because not everything is predictable, right? So I would say Microsoft is very good at predicting predictable things, right? Like, for example, extrapolating a time series of demand, or a lot of our revenue is linked to contracts. So I would say projecting that it's not very difficult. But one of the things that the Microsoft management has been very clear is that the cultural components are as important as the technology. So, for example, there are a couple of examples on how they are bringing this to life. The first one is that in Microsoft we embrace this concept of growth mindset, right? Growth mindset is the belief that any drawback or any issue or any error is just an instance of your personal learning. That you can bounce back from whatever mistake you make, and if you don't know something, you never have to use the expression of "I'm not good at that." So Microsoft replaces that concept, but not yet, right? So it's something you are in progress, it's work in progress, you're always work in progress. So one of the, I would say, big consequences of this growth mindset is that error gets normalized. So we talk about error. I wouldn't say it's perfect yet, but I can see this even in my short tenure in Microsoft, that people are much more open to speak about errors, and that we have in place things like after-action reviews or post-mortems that allow us to dwell on the errors, and very importantly, not to finger point, but to understand the sequence of events, understand what part of the process has been broken down, how can we fix it. Very forward-looking kind of analysis, right? So I would say growth mindset is the first one. And the second one is the availability of data, right? One of the biggest challenges when you want to learn from data is that companies are not very good at keeping file of what happened, right? So a data company like Microsoft allows you to have the data from 3, 4, 5, 8 years engagements, so you can really learn from the past, right?
Okay, that's very interesting. You have mentioned the culture of in progress, everyone is improving in that growth path, but even the methodology is in progress. So you are learning by doing how to adapt and adopt it. So very, very enlightening.
No, indeed. I think the complexity of the environment is such that you cannot trying to capture it in its totality, right? You will always be work in progress, and I think these technological companies who are very much advanced than maybe other industries, they came to realize this. So I think you have to have a certain respect for complexity, and this respect for complexity traduces in the fact that you need to have processes for handling errors, because errors are inevitable, right?